Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. This episode, we are joined by Mr. Myron Stadnyk, chairman of Vermilion Energy and board member of Whitecap Resources and Mancal Corporation. This podcast episode is powered by ATB Capital Markets. ATB Capital Markets provides financial solutions and strategic advisory services to help businesses thrive. With a track record of successful deal execution, ATB is a full-service investment dealer with a deep understanding and commitment to the industries it serves. Visit atbcapitalmarkets.com for more information. This podcast episode is brought to you by EPAC, the Explorers and Producers Association of Canada. So if you're ready, we can begin.
Please. Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Myron Stadnyk. Thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for inviting me, Trevor. I look forward to it.
For the listener, nowadays you are the chair of Vermilion Energy, along with a board member of Whitecap Resources. But prior to all that, you were the CEO of ARC Resources, if I'm correct.
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah.
So how are you spending your days now that you're retired, so to speak?
Well, yeah, the board work keeps me involved in the industry, and I'm also on one private energy board, so that's giving me new learnings on private and public companies, so that's lots of fun. I'm into aviation, so I've been able to kind of get back to flying again. Jennifer and I are blessed with 6 grandkids, number 7 on the way, so to get all the kids little motorbikes and doing my hunting, playing my musical instruments, visiting my parents who are getting elderly. Just really blessed in my retirement to still be connected to business and have all these fun things to do, Trevor.
And after this, you're heading off on a bike ride to BC, I think.
Yeah, I brought my Harley in this morning down McLeod Trail, which was a little scary. But then we're heading to Caslow, where all those good biking roads are.
So you're in a good mood today, which is good for me.
Yeah, oh, you bet.
I thought for the purposes of today's conversation, we could structure it roughly on the early days and your career and how you got involved with ARC, and then some current events, if that works for you.
Yeah.
So to go back to the start, how did you get into energy and why?
Yeah, so my first job in energy was in 1982 up at what used to be BP Marguerite Lake, which was a pilot for Wolf Lake, which is thermal oil now. And I think it's now owned by CNRL, still producing. And I worked a summer there. Then I worked a summer for Amoco and Drayton Valley, a summer for Shell and Calgary and all around. And then just really interested in the industry. My mom's family, all her brothers had farms, so I was kind of connected to the reality of farming and the pragmatism, practicality of it, and could see all that in the oil patch. The young person just needed a job, to be frank. And then as I worked in it, fell in love with it. Like wow, what other career can you get where you can work around the world and invest all this capital, learn about business? Kind of took off from there. Then I started with Shell. I worked I guess you could call me kind of the nuts and bolts mechanical engineer. I worked in the different parts in Western Canada and really fortunate to get on a big project called Shell Caroline, where back then they actually had parades in the town of Sundre to support the business versus being antagonistic against the industry. So that was in the late 80s. Got 4 years on Shell Caroline, which was $1 billion project. Saw it from a field to a really high-tech operation that's still going today. That experience in project management, I went overseas, did LNG in Malaysia 30-some years ago. And that foundation of project management allowed me then to build a resume that was attractive to ARC and was able to get over to ARC.
Originally did an engineering degree in Saskatchewan.
Yes, yeah, Saskatoon. You know, the old days where you just go to the school that's closest to where you grew up. You don't really pan the world for education opportunities. Yeah.
And was the plan to go right into oil and gas, or were you looking around? You probably had some options at the time.
When I graduated, the economy was horrible. I remember there were 72 engineers in my class of mechanical. I think only 5 of the people had a job when we said goodbye to each other at the end of our graduation. So it wasn't a pick and choose time. because I had that experience in the industry, Shell gave me a full-time job, and I was really thankful for that. Great company. But because I had my pilot's license and my best friend was a commercial pilot, I was interested in aviation. So I did explore going into aeronautical engineering. It just wasn't a practical option. And I love Western Canada. That's my home, big family guy. So it all worked out that I could have a great career and still be in Western Canada.
Early 1980s, so interest rates would have been high and tough time to get a job.
Yeah, the talk around the coffee pot back then, the coffee came in a big pot, it smelled awful. And, but everyone was still gathered around it, and all people were talking about the older people. I was 22, like those older people that were 40. They were all talking whether to give their keys back on their houses. Their mortgages were 18, 19, 20%. When Jennifer and I bought our house, we waited a few years to get our first house, and we were more in that 8% range. But all these numbers would be astronomical compared to today. It was a different time.
And so you graduated, packed up, and moved out to Calgary, more or less?
Yeah. I had my grandma's car that I still got and put my guitar and everything I owned fit in the back of a 1969 Ford Falcon. Came downtown Calgary and lived kitty corner to Shell Center. And then I think 6 of us engineers got 2 condos up in Forest Lawn, and we each paid $150 each for our rent. And that was kind of the start. And then a couple of years later, I got married and bought a house in Renfrew.
Wasn't an easy time, though.
Not easy time, no. We pinched our pennies. We wrote down everything that we bought in a book and kept track of everything. Yeah.
You remember your first day at Shell?
Yeah. It was like, I distinctly remember parking because I wanted to be early, so I brought I brought the old beater down and parked what used to be the bus barn. And I just remember walking and looking at all these buildings when you're from where I'm from. It was just impressive, all this shiny glass, tall buildings. You felt like an ant walking through there. You're used to it now, but I actually think about that quite often.
And was the plan to see where it went at Shell? How were you thinking about your career at the time?
Yeah, like I worked as thoughtfully and as diligently as I could at Shell. Jennifer and I have a son and 2 daughters, and it kind of hit that point, mid-30s, where we start to think about our family. And with Shell, I transferred a lot. On Shell Caroline, I told you what that was 4 years, but I lived in Caroline. I lived in Rocky Mountain House. I lived in Calgary twice. I worked in an engineering office. It was corporate military. So my wife's father had worked for SAS Power and was transferred 13 times. And so I actually went to ARC thinking about my family and building a little more stability. It was a family first decision. And I know you interviewed Mac on your podcast and had about a 3-hour interview with Mac, and it was all about values and just building a business because I was a project manager and I just loved building stuff. And ARC was like a big project. Let's build this thing. And so the move to ARC was entrepreneurial also, but it allowed me to think about what was best for my family. My wife was teaching at the time as well.
1997, you applied to work at ARC, but you had to interview with Mr. Mac Van Willigen. It's hard to imagine nowadays after you've been CEO and you're on the board of various companies, but at the time, were you nervous? What was that like?
I was nervous, and when I was leaving Shell, I was interviewing with 5 companies. I wanted to cast my net out to see and then compare. My brain kind of works by comparison. And so I had some kind of slam dunk opportunities where you knew you'd get paid. And then I had this weird opportunity with ARC where it had no benefits and but it was all alignment with Mac from that interview. And yes, I was nervous, but when Mac started asking me about my family and about my values and about my long-term goals and examples of my commitment and dedication, I felt like, oh, this is great. I can build implicit trust with the leaders of this company and be part of a group of like-minded people, hardworking people, thoughtful people, financially savvy people. I'm like, wow, this is for me. But back then it was a trust era, early trust. But I was young enough not to appreciate the risk involved and just went in there full blast.
How'd you hear
Mm.
about the opportunity?
It was just word of mouth. I was at an engineering course actually, learning about reservoir engineering, and the guy sitting beside me had interviewed with ARC, and he said, "There's this neat opportunity. ARC Energy Trust has bought these assets from Mobil, but they don't have any operations." And the guy said, "Myron, you know about operations? Why don't you see what's going on?" So then I talked to a lady named Trish Hines, who was running a headhunter at Genesis, it was called, and was able to get interviews with Mac and John Dilworth and Doug Bonner. All are still my friends today.
And it worked out. They
Mm.
hired you.
I was lucky. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as a operations
Yeah, so my
engineer?
first job was called operations manager, and my key role in the very beginning was to create ARC's operations. Mobil was contract operating these assets that ARC Energy Trust had purchased from Mobil. It was, I just went up to Drayton Valley. Back then, I couldn't even lease trucks for my guys. They didn't know who ARC was, so I had to go in. I talked to 3 or 4 businesses and, finally was able to convince a local dealer in Drayton Valley to lease us 4 trucks, and I hired 4 operators. I got the office going. We didn't really have any staff. My wife would come in on the weekends and help me, put the maps in my office and watch the kids, and then, I remember backing the truck up to Mobil's office in Drayton Valley and actually carrying the well files out myself and putting them in the truck and then taking them to ARC's new office and setting. It was a completely different time. ARC's a great big grand company now, but in the early days, it was just a handful of us doing everything from buying the photocopier to drilling the wells. So,
What was the production initially at ARC?
the first acquisition was 9,800 barrels, around 10,000 barrels, but only about 20% of that was operated. So the others were joint interests, say in Shell Caroline, 2%, some interest in Weyburn, and the operated was a couple thousand barrels, so rather small. But the move to control the strategy, the move was to start operating as much as we could, because if you control the operations, you can control the strategy. And ARC's more or less 100% operated now, and I moved it from that 20% operatorship to 100%. Operatorship was a real key focus on the type of assets we bought, but that's the humble beginnings.
At the time, the
Mm,
business model was the trust to pay out your capital through dividends and whatnot to support the shareholders. But from an operational perspective, what was your value proposition or what were you looking for? Just stable decline assets?
yeah, exactly. So a lot of the key assets, Weyburn as an example, still producing today. Shell Caroline, Drayton Valley was the core of our operations. That's low decline Cardium oil, at the time the largest oil pooling, conventional oil pool in Canada. And our value proposition was really simple stuff, Trevor. So I can remember one field called Lindale Cardium Unit was producing about 56 cubes a day. And it just had simple things to do, like reactivate wells, use chemical to get the wax out of the wells, optimize the way the water was going. A couple wells, we just needed to fix the casing. So, but we took that production there from 56 to 85 cubes a day, basically spending minimal dollars. And we were doing that type of thing everywhere. So really, it was just creating a culture of excellence. So at the beginning was a lot about creating culture. So, you know, I have these fancy corporate retreats where CEOs and everybody stand up and talk. Well, at our retreats, the guys that operated the fields would also stand up and talk with Mac in the room and John and myself. And that's how tight we were. We were creating a culture of excellence. And you can make money tweaking things or spending a lot of money. And we didn't even drill our first well till 98, even though we'd been on. Last week was our July 15th was ARC's 29th anniversary. But we were patient, get to know the assets, and then the value proposition moved to optimizing and drilling, and also cutting operating costs, just doing things more efficiently, less G&A, and thinking about excellence on every item in your financial performance.
Looking back, there was a A lot of low-hanging fruit from, like, reoptimizing and whatnot, but did
Mhm.
you realize that? Did it just kind of unfold? Did you recognize the opportunity?
Yeah, like we recognized the opportunities on the cost structure, especially. You could see that if we created a more sophistication around monitoring the well. So I used to go up every month for a well review, and a lot about communications, kind of the core of the business. And I just listen to the guys and say, we've always wanted to try this. We shut this well in 5 years ago because of this, and you start to see thematics of previous operators, but it's just not go and do it. You have to develop a technical approach to. And our CEO John was a technical person, so we kind of really tacked things technically and with good communication. So
You didn't drill your first well for about a year?
yeah, yeah.
Do you remember the first well?
Oh yeah, it was at Mydale. I was in charge of drilling, and actually I'd never drilled a well because I was doing big projects at Shell. So what I did is I just got in my truck and I drove around southeast Saskatchewan, and I met who I thought were the best people at drilling, and I'd stop in the little towns, and I think that was maybe something unique about me. I wanted to meet the people firsthand and talk to them, appreciate their expertise. And we put together a drilling team and drilled that first vertical well in the Mydale, and it came on great. And we had our payouts and very counter-cyclical, and it was just north of the Shell Mydale unit, and our costs were lower than a lot of the operators were achieving in the area. And after that well, I had all those teams get together, and we went and played pool in Regina. And a whole bunch of them told me it's the first time that the producer ever acknowledged their efforts. And I guess I keep giving examples that go back to the culture of communication and caring about our people, and yielded great business results.
What was the, ARC Resources well license name at the time? ARC?
Arc, yeah, Arc Mydale.
Okay.
I have a picture of it at my house. Yeah, yeah.
And it was a success. Sometimes first well doesn't pan out, but in this case, it was
Yeah,
good
it
well.
was okay, yeah, kind of the north end of the Frobisher, and our engineers, people were contract geologists back then, did a great job of progging the well, and it worked out. Yeah,
How come you decided it was time to drill a well? What led to that decision?
just starting to build the expertise of the company, and the opportunity as presented was very rewarding. We had some pretty strict financial metrics on our returns. We always wanted to make double of what we invested. Recycle ratio was something we talked about. If it cost us $10 a barrel to find it, we wanted to have a net back of $20. So we would went through all our metrics, and we're always guided by profitability. And when those opportunities competed for capital, we would present it to our board, and we're able to sanction that. So just pretty much what carries on today. And
Was it a big risk at the time for the company?
we didn't feel it was, because we had the technical work done and the capital was reasonable. So
Lots of engineers start out in the energy industry, but not many become CEO. Accepting the role of a bit of luck along the way, what do you think made you different and allowed you to rise up to CEO? Did you look at assets differently, or?
I feel like I demonstrated my commitment to our board, and ARC's a results-focused company, and we had great results for many years, and in a positive way too, like with a lot of joy executing the business and balancing our family lives. Coached hockey for 8 years and coached soccer. And I think I showed the board that I had multiple dimensions. I supported the community. I was on the board of Stars, for example, for 6 years. I was able to demonstrate to the board business focus, business results, commitment. I guess working 18 hours a day for 20 some years does that. But also just more Brad thinking about the bigger picture, the communities, how we support our society, contributing to sports, to the arts, just building a really great Western Canada, thinking big picture. And then providing, I always like to think about options. I think that made me a little bit unique. Okay, you just talked about the well versus the optimizing things. Well, there's, the big picture strategic options. And I put myself out there. I had a teenage age family or young 20s, and I went to Harvard for 2 months to, improve my financial acumen and did the Haskell management essentials. So I think my board could see that I was always trying to learn, because this game's about continuous learning and communicating. And I think at the core of it, I really loved our people, and I still do. And caring about the success of our people. And I still was involved in interviews of all the senior people when I was CEO, building that team, knowing that this is more than just one person. Those are the traits I hope they saw. They must have. They gave me the job, and I was president for 11 years. It was a real honor to lead ARC.
ARC worked out, but did you have a plan B if it didn't pan out?
I never was really worried about plan B. Just giving her the best I could on plan A. And if something hadn't worked out, I suppose I would have had to come up with another plan, start my own company. I felt confident in my skills.
When did you realize ARC was working and that this venture was going really well, and maybe you didn't have to worry as much anymore?
I felt like once we started developing the Montney and consolidating our asset base, in 98, we did acquisitions, 99, 2000, we had assets from Manitoba, out at Goodlands, all the way up to Fort St. John, just disparate properties. And once we started to focus and started consistently finding reserves for low cost and producing them for a higher cost, I could feel the flywheel starting to pick up momentum. And we used a lot of these Collins books in the formation of ARC. Built to Last is an example. Jim Collins wrote, so there's Built to Last, Great by Choice, all these books. And when it starts with leadership and building the team. So it's first who, then what. So to answer your question about like when I felt confident about this company really doing well, the who was strong. First who, we had a great team of executives. We built a functional organization, so had experts in geology, experts in operations, experts in finance. And when I sat with that team, you just felt all the confidence in the world that we were doing smart things. Then measuring, so we measured our results very carefully, every well, all of our performance, for profit, all of this in the goal of profitability. And then even now, ARC still has a chart in the IR deck of the profitability of the company. And you can see it getting, even in low times, making the grade. And it's a hallmark of the company. As we moved into the Montney and got bigger plays, the profitability starting a bit better. The predictability, it's stressful for the engineer finding the next well sometimes. And then the Montney, it's switched to manufacturing mode. And you could have different assets competing for capital and feel that flywheel building momentum to where it is today. And that's when I said, hey, this thing's really rolling.
This podcast episode is sponsored by Connate Water Solutions. Do you need cost-effective water sourcing options to supply your next drilling or completions program? Connate Water Solutions is a specialized hydrogeology company focused on water well drilling, testing, and water management services in Western Canada and Texas. Contact info@connatewater.com or check out connatewater.com for more details. This podcast episode is brought to you by JSG Professional Services, Canada's trusted leader in pipeline construction management and inspection resources. JSG provides competent, qualified, and verified pipeline construction management and inspection resources, supporting Canada's largest pipeline companies from initial development through final execution. Whether your project involves new pipeline construction, integrity programs, maintenance, pump stations, compressor stations, or inline inspections, JSG has consistently delivered experienced professionals to Canada's energy industry. JSG proudly supports Canada's energy infrastructure with competent, qualified, and verified pipeline construction management and inspection resources. Visit jsginc.com for more information. So, Circa
Mhm.
2005. Depending on who you ask is when the Montney started to emerge. Do you remember when you first heard about the Montney formation and how was it presented to you?
Yeah, so we got into the Montney first in a deal in 2000. So we were
The year
5
2000.
years ahead. We bought a property called Ante Creek, which is Montney oil. It's a little bit more conventional, but there actually was an old Montney pool. There's lots of Montney wells drilled through the Montney in the old days. Our reservoir VP of exploitation, Doug Bonner, is just a super genius on all this stuff. And I worked on the ops side, and he looked at type curves from old Montney wells that actually had been producing. And we had kind of a 5-year head start on analyzing the Montney. In 2005, it was ARC that drilled the first horizontal well in the Montney. Everyone thinks it was in Canada, but we did it up in Dawson Creek. And our current CEO, Terry, was instrumental in that and the plan. And then when we first bought Dawson, which is the more sort of well-known part of the Montney within ARC's portfolio, there were 39 wells producing, 0.3 million a day. And we thought if we drill a horizontal, maybe we'll get, 2 or 3 million a day, but we'd get 5 or 10 million a day. And they called that the productivity improvement factor. It just was leaps and bounds better. And we cracked a nut. Then we had to get the cost of these things down. But little humble ARC in behind the scenes was quietly doing all these things. Actually brought some offshore technology to co-bridge at the well. Was and perfect, and it's different than it was now. But the bottom line is we opened up the reservoir. Then we could take some of that technology back to Annie Creek, start drilling horizontal wells. And we had enough assets that we could get a head start on it. And then started building the land position more organically through land sales, which is a lot more profitable because it's lower cost. You're buying and developing versus buying another company. And we had a great head start on that, Trevor.
So circa 2000 was a sleepy afternoon one day when the Montney PowerPoint came through your office. Do you remember that?
Well, it was an asset with an exciting story that's too long to tell on the podcast, but we were able to get all of the conventional oil assets across Western Canada from one of the larger companies around town, which included production in Saskatchewan and Alberta and 2 Montney pools.
In the year 2000.
In 2000, yeah. One called Valhalla and one called Ante Creek. So they were part of a bigger package. And back to my stories about keeping really close with the field guys, I went and toured Ante Creek and asked them about drilling, and they drove me around and said, "Well, how about here where all the prior company has already put all the survey stakes?" So all the wells had been progged, but those were sold for good reasons by the other company. They were working on other things and they wanted cash, and we were able to get them on. I remember we paid $4 a barrel for that deal, and so we had room to move. And it was kind of a cool story because the deal was 135 million. And now you've got all this electronic banking and everything. But back then you had to give checks at the closing. But the largest check the bank would let you issue was 100 million. So our VP of land, Susan, she said, "Myron, you come with me. You're a big guy." So I had to carry the check that was 99 million, and she took the one that was 36. And then we gave them 2 checks to make the 135, and they gave us so that is just different than it. And it's not that long ago, but it's interesting how technology and financial management changed so quickly. But it makes a funner story, doesn't it? Yeah,
A different time.
yeah, yeah.
Did you realize the
Mm.
potential of the liquids-rich gas and the Deep Basin Montney portion?
At the time, it was still being figured out.
In the year
Um,
2001, 2000.
Yeah, 2005 even. It was all backwards. The oil is supposed to be at the up dip part and the gas is so it wasn't well understood. We were able to buy large enough tracts of land that often covered the different, the Tower is one example where it was light oil, and Sunrise, which is a super field for ARC now, is dry gas is deeper, higher temperatures. But it's really well understood now. But at the time, every time you wanted to learn something, it cost you $5 or $10 million, right? At that time, there were only dozens of Montney wells. Now there's thousands. So the data set wasn't obvious what the rock would yield. But our geologist, John Miller, was an exceptional geologist that helped us figure all that and actually got us to buy land in areas where there may have been wells drilled through 30, 40 years ago. But he started to piece it all together based on his intellect.
And so you slowly start to figure out maybe there was a lot more gas and condensates here than you realized.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It'd be funny now, like how big we thought Dawson was versus how big it really is. We were underestimating it dramatically back in those days.
As you realize that, was it a tough sell to start to raise more money for the Montney? Or like, it's hard to imagine now, but what was that like?
I think now if you go and meet with the financial backers, you tell them you have Montney, they know what it is, they give you money. We had to take type curves and show my generation, we were proving that the Montney was a good investment opportunity. And we were convincing every meeting and showing well curves and showing our fields and showing the economics. And we were still convincing that people to invest in ARC and that there was lots of inventory and it was predictable. But there was a couple, 3 years of selling the Montney, because some areas were dry, some had water. They would get all these different stories. And so we were always trying to prove the Montney was a good investment versus just going in now and bragging that you have Montney. Yeah.
How was it described to you originally?
There was different geological theories. Some had aeolian, that the wind had blown these big sands, and other ones had these deltaic type of concepts. But the bottom line is you could see the porosity and permeability. The big breakthrough was horizontal drilling and actually coring the wells to confirm what the rock properties are versus what the log said. So our cutoffs in Dawson that we first used would be slam dunk now. People would just go, we're just drill that, you're going to get a good well. But we didn't know. We were still trying to figure out what the geological properties would produce economic oil and gas. So we actually invested, for the size of our company, a lot in coring wells, really understanding what we had. Back then, you were just at the upper Montney. You didn't even really work on the lower Montney. So some of these areas that have multiple horizons, we were just focused on the big bright spot on the logs. Still learning today, I'm sure.
Yeah. Halloween 2005, the end of the trust era changed the structure of ARC, but it evolved and became a company. And so how did you think about the nature of the assets and that evolution when you were discovering the Montney? As it moved from a trust to a company, what was the thoughts behind that?
I think ARC's good luck and good planning that you could see. If I remember right, the trust era, we were given a few years notice that it would end. And it gave us time to transform the business model from an acquisitor to a developer. And that's a bit of the answer to, why I moved to chief operating officer and to president, because I had my experience on project management and executing on projects. And the ARC started building and becoming more of an E&P in the traditional sense. But we're always like that. From 96, our core group was always a technical focused group with strong financial guidance. But it almost seemed natural because you were running out of shallow gas wells. I think if I remember right, it was 75 shallow gas wells to make one Montney well. So 75 landowner deals, pipelines, on and on. And here you could just drill one in Montney.
Yeah.
So the transition was economically driven and technically driven, but our people were ready ahead of time to make that leap to developing our one asset bases, building gas plants, doing large scale projects, doing marketing contracts. It was dramatic at the time, ending the trust era, but for ARC, we planned our way around it and came out the other side doing very well.
So the idea was to transition to a corporate structure and to start more as an E&P company to drill and, I guess, increase the share price rather than paying out your capital and dividends.
Yeah, exactly. And we still always were dividend focused. The dividend was always a core return and still is at ARC. But the quality of the new plays actually took less capital than the old. If you acquire someone that's a property that someone's already gone through for 10 years, they found the low-hanging fruit. We could start with a white piece of paper and develop our own and have 100% of the opportunity. And that was really a difference. So it actually made more economic sense because the Montney was there to do that.
And the risk, it was risky at the time, but you could see the opportunity.
Yeah, you could see the opportunity when you saw the financial results. So I remember distinctly that our F&D for the company on the non-Montney assets was $22 a barrel. It cost us to find a barrel. And the Montney, we were drilling wells and finding barrels for sub 10. And when you did your netbacks, the Montney was all financially driven on those recycle ratios, one I mentioned before, but over life, profit, the size. As the company got bigger, you also need bigger projects to create NPV to add value for the shareholder. So we're NPV driven, creating value and paying a dividend at the same time. So.
You had competition at the time, very stiff competition with companies like Tourmaline, Peyto. There was enough room for everyone, but was it tough to stay ahead of it, or how did you compete with? How did that go?
Yeah, like those are all excellent companies, and it's good that we're all here still. I always like it that there's more successful Canadian companies. But competing with Tourmaline, so the predecessor to Tourmaline was Duvernay, and actually part of ARC's assets, we were doing deals to make each company better. During those times, you get larger blocks of land, so we did some swaps and things, and Mike Rose and I played hockey together at Shell, so we know each other. These are exceptional businessmen. Peyto run an exceptional low-cost company, but it's competitive. We found our niche, and they found theirs.
And then Hitachi came along. Do you remember when you realized the potential of Hitachi?
Yeah, so we first bought the land for Hitachi in 2009. And it's in the press releases now, producing 40,000 barrels. Gives you a sense of the opportunity was there. We bought tens of millions of dollars, bought a massive plot of land there that is the core of the field now. And a bit to your question about how did you manage all this stuff? Well, we were, investing in Dawson where we were getting our returns, and then tried to manage 5 to 10% on new plays, exploration, brownfield or greenfield, and take that thoughtful amount of money to advance. So Hitachi was being advanced in the background while you were commercializing Dawson, while you were commercializing Parkland. And then it gets its turn in the queue. Once all that technical is done, the land's done, the marketing. Marketing is a big thing, underestimated in Western Canada. We were way ahead on that. We helped 2 other companies actually bring, the TransCanada pipe into BC. You forget that wasn't even there 20 years ago. So now everyone talks, we just pipe in. Well, that pipe wasn't even there. So it takes time to get all this, get the liquids lines. You're in areas with new infrastructure. So great to see Hitachi rolling now. Mm-hmm. That was the start of it.
Speaking of marketing, did you realize or did you worry that oversupply of natural gas with all these successful assets might be a problem? Sub-dollar gas all winter this year. Did you ever think about that?
Oh, yeah. That's all we thought about. You could see the productivity of the wells. They're so good, but we came up with a diversification strategy a long time ago. And because ARC always had a strong balance sheet, we were very attractive to partner with marketing companies that we were lower risk and a preferred customer with a business plan that you could see. So it's a long time ago that we started diversifying our gas to Chicago, through to Dawn, out to Toronto, down south to California. ARC's now in some LNG contracts, but that was 15, 20 years. We were way ahead of diversifying so that you didn't have to just get the AECO price. We would take these netbacks from all these other things and average a pool price for ARC. So I had worked on LNG, which is all marketing based, when I was 29, 30 over in Malaysia. And it taught me a lot about thinking about markets first and then drilling your wells. So I think that paid a lot of rewards for ARC.
Because the critical investor would say, commodities are so cyclical. I don't just want to ride the commodity cycle up and down. Did you think of the marketing as a important part to make sure ARC was resilient to
Yeah.
the commodity cycles?
Yeah, exactly, the marketing and you if there wasn't a lot of rain in California and the hydro went down and then there's more demand for gas, you actually never knew which hub was gonna be the highest. It was usually one that you didn't think, or Chicago had a super vortex, polar vortex, and they were using 24Bs or whatever. It you didn't know it, but you knew that diversifying was going to help you. And the other thing was hedging. We were sophisticated on hedging on our longer term. So our board would encourage us. So say the first project we built in Dawson, hedge so that you made sure that that project had excellent economics. So we were allowed by our board to think long term. And I think that was ARC's key advantage. We were always encouraged to think long term. Think long term on hedging, long term on your developments. Think long term on your supply costs. You know, what are you paying for your drilling pipe? What are you paying for your electricity? So, like I talked about before, excellence in every little thing.
Did you divide up your day between marketing versus drilling, organic drilling versus HR? How did you think about the value drivers at the time?
You know, we were really disciplined about our week. Really, my only free day was Friday to go, and I'd like to every Friday morning go around and just talk to different people in the company and learn what I could learn and enjoy time. Thursdays, we had our marketing meetings. Monday, our management meetings. We structured it so that all the priorities kept in this disciplined approach of communication. Maybe sometimes they weren't that long. Sometimes they were longer, but there was always a nugget. And we did employee surveys all the time. It always came up. Biggest thing is communication. And that's the same with a family or with an executive team. So that's how we did it, Trevor.
When you become CEO, your time is limited. How did you balance the weeds of the business, for instance, single well economics with capital allocation and larger strategy? How did you think about that? Did you have to get right down into each well?
I focused on people and strategy. And, I didn't get the drilling reports for years. And when I was CEO, I kind of wanted to see them, but I knew I shouldn't be doing that. And so it just came back to having these great people. Neil as a geologist and Terry as chief operating officer and different people in these groups managing that day to day. And then I was always focused on my board communication, bigger picture, communicating with our owners, our shareholders, always thinking about strategy, thinking of ways to communicate strategy. It's not the easiest thing to take operational plans and then communicate them as strategic plans. But that's where I spent my time, and then making sure we had the best of the best people.
When you're communicating the value proposition from a capital perspective, what did you look towards? Was it return on equity, per share growth, free cash flow per share growth? What did you focus on?
If you look at stocks that do well, Canadian banks, for example, you look at their return on equity. This is why they continue to be able to reinvest in themselves. So I think that's at the highest level, but there's lots of building blocks below that, right? Your cash flow generation capability, your profitability of your individual investments, your cost structure, G&A, your operating costs, the amount of interest that you're paying on your debt. So our management team, we used to go once a month through every line item. And I was big into accountability. It doesn't sound that nice, but which throat to choke, So the debt, our CFO would talk about that and what that line item would cost the company. We would go in a rigorous way through each line item to look at what our net back, and we could kind of see our profitability. And then we were active on the asset basis. So we actually made a lot of money buying an average asset and producing it for a while. And if you could sell it at the end of the journey and do your overlife economics, you had actually done very well, thinking about the timing of these things. So moving assets in and out of the company actually contributed to the value creation as well. But you had to have that expert team to be able to do all these things. So those are some of the things I was working on, thinking of better ways to communicate. And as got more experience, I really started to understand how our brains work by comparison and how communicating my results by comparing to others or comparing to other things within the company. But that took a lot of work to be creative around that, but it paid off.
What were the KPIs from a high level operationally? What did you look towards there?
Yeah, so, operationally, there's kind of two buckets, the capital and then the operating costs. So operating costs, we went right through every line item on the lease ops. I don't know how much the guys liked working with me on that stuff because I was the first ops guy and we even invented all the codes when I was telling you about we couldn't get a truck, but we were already working on our cost centers and making sure we could accurately track all of our costs. So on operating costs, we had a real rigorous KPIs from everything from the cost of electricity to municipal taxes to the employees to trucks to fuel. It's a long, long list. But we like the use of building tornado charts around those things and attacking your big drivers. And all of these things are just communication tools, right? And it's more being personal. And then on the capital, you needed KPIs for all the different things. How much are you paying for your drilling rig? How much are you paying for? Then comparing your execution costs with other companies. And safety was the most important. So the KPI there was to have zero incidents. We had many years with no lost time accidents. And I credited our team. They knew the names of the tool pushes. It was a family. And you didn't want to hurt anyone in your family. And it was very powerful.
This episode is brought to you by Astro Oilfield Rentals. Distance can elevate risk, be it equipment failure, cash burn, or threats to your reputation. Astro Oilfield Rentals can help minimize those risks for you. With an impressive fleet of well-site trailers, cutting-edge communications equipment, expert technicians, and round-the-clock diagnostics, Astro ensures your remote operations stay productive from the U.S. border to the Arctic Circle. Astro Oilfield Rentals is there for you no matter the mile. Learn more at astrorentals.ca. This episode is brought to you by the Canadian Gas Association. The Canadian Gas Association represents Canada's natural gas delivery industry, whose members include distribution companies, transmission companies, equipment manufacturers, and other service providers. The Canadian Gas Association members deliver safe, reliable, and affordable natural gas to meet 38% of Canada's energy needs. Visit cga.ca to learn more about Canada's natural gas. Nowadays at a board level, do you look to the top of that chart for an assessment of how things are going? How do you think about it from that perspective?
I work hard on the boards to understand what drives the different companies. And I really do start with the financial performance and then try to link it to the assets. Maybe a little bit higher level KPI, but what's contributing to the success and what's taking away from the success. But it's, again, on a board level, starts with safety, high level performance, and then comparing that performance. And I think as a board member, any question's good as long as it's a genuine learning question. So really try not to grandstand in the board meeting, just really learn what is going on with the business and really get to understand the expertise of the people and how they're working all together. Is that a well-oiled machine that's going to yield the best business results? So
nowadays, which plays are you currently looking at? Without giving me your secrets, what do you think is the best blend of reservoir quality, development, flexibility, and return on capital invested? Moving to some current events and what you're up to now.
Well, as chair of Vermilion, we're doing some conventional drilling in Germany. The whole European landscape has changed it was very tough to get licenses to drill. Now there's a rig just starting running in Netherlands here now. We've had some success in Germany. These gas prices are 10 times higher than here. So the profitability is interesting. So it's hard to just say, okay, I like this play. It has to be contexted in, your price regime, the scale of the opportunity, what fits each different company, small company, large company. But clearly the investors seem to really be liking the Montney. The Duvernay they were less attuned to when I was CEO. That's come into the forefront now and better understood as a high quality opportunity. So I guess you could say things that are more appreciated by our investors are more predictability. It's the longer you're a CEO or a chief art, the more you realize this is all about risk management and the more predictable economics, the more predictable inventory, that's what's attracting investors. So, but there's good plays all around the world. I still wouldn't mind a good 25,000 barrel a day well in the Middle East somewhere. Yeah.
Technology? What are you looking at from that perspective? Is there anything that really excites you now?
Yeah, the technology transformation into the horizontal multi-stage, it feels like that's well understood now. And the movement of AI is talked a lot about. But so I asked the AI, can you tell me where some big oil fields are that aren't found? And it didn't know.
Yeah,
And,
it hasn't got there yet.
the co-pilot didn't know that yet. So there's still lots of room for human advancement. But I think technology in every part of the business, oil sands, conventional, every company's working on their next technical. And really at the core of it is efficiency driving cost down, production up. It's the same story.
You recently joined the board of Whitecap Resources.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you join the Whitecap board? Nowadays, you've got options and you can do what you want. But besides being a great company, what attracted you to that company?
I was on the board of Varen for 5 years and prior Crescent Point, and that movement of the asset base of Varen and Whitecap, that's going to be such a dominant position in Alberta. And the addition of the Duvernay from Varen, I really feel like it's going to be a lot of fun seeing this unfold, and high quality assets. The management team at Whitecap, excellent people, very pragmatic, executing, and been around a lot longer than most people appreciate. And to go on these boards, I kind of have this feeling like, is there something I can offer them? And I feel like, okay, ARC went from the trust to the EPC. Varen, really, that's what we were doing there, moving from the trust into more concentrated assets. Whitecap has a lot of assets. How management's going to have that unfold, I'm still learning, but I think I can offer perspective there that might be helpful.
Exciting opportunity.
It's exciting. Yeah. And, back to my comment about high quality Canadian companies, I want to be associated with those. I'm proud of our Western Canadian companies. I love Calgary and Western Canada, the success here. I just hope I can contribute to success in whatever I can offer.
The demand for energy keeps going up, oil and gas, every year, basically. But from your perspective, how do Canadian producers balance capital discipline with the rising demands of hydrocarbons? How do you think about that?
It's so interesting because being out of the ARC history, we were always giving dividends to our shareholders and trying to grow our production per share, right? I'm at the age where I like dividends and I like the success of the company to keep growing. And that's the point. If you actually do a big picture look at all of the stock exchange for 100 years, returns do come from earnings in the form of dividends or profitable growth, not just growth. So I think that to meet the world demand, we're going to be scouring the world for profitable growth. And investors are going to look for profitable growth and whatever form they see fit for them. That will drive it. The sector's underinvested in right now. If you kind of look at the proportion of money going from the indexes to just companies of the size of Vermilion and Whitecap, that will pick up when investors see that there's a need to fill that gap of more production, requiring more product. But I think they'll always be very thoughtful about who's doing this in a profitable way. Yeah.
The sector's been underinvested the last 10 years. Did you think of it as investors will eventually find you if your earnings are consistent combined with dividends, and eventually stock price will follow that? Did you view it that way?
Yeah, I viewed it that way, but you have to have exceptional results. You can open the newspaper every day and there's 1,000 stocks sitting there you can buy. Why do you want to buy this one? So back to my communication, my first year as CEO, I think I did 28 or 30 conferences just to make people aware, plus lots of marketing. I was able just to do key conferences after a couple years in establishing a network, but I still went basically around the world twice a year. Go to Europe twice, go to Asia once, across North America, and then start thinking creatively. Where can I align investors that are aligned with ARC's values? Thinking long term. Oh, pension funds, starting to find these type of people. We had to work too to find audiences that we thought resonated with our name. Just kind of go in that same conference all the time and talk to that same guy. So there's huge value on thoughtful investor relations, loving what you do, being enthusiastic about your business. In the end, those investors are buying management's expertise, management's level of dedication and caring, and always tried to exhibit that globally. But think globally, even though I keep saying I love Calgary. Yeah.
Did you seek a quality investor through the years?
We were very fortunate to have RBC with us almost the whole time. Very high quality investors. We sought out different pension funds and drove to some off the beaten track places. I remember meeting sometimes 10 times with one, because those sophisticated investors, they really want to know you. And the best compliment you can get when they have it writing down your little book and you tell them stuff, and they go, "Oh, that's the same thing you told me last time. I like that." But you might have to meet many times to get the big dog to invest in you, but we've had success there.
Do you think Canadian energy policy is helping or hindering competition globally?
Well, clearly it's been hindering. The last 10 years have been a nightmare. I just got back from Dubai a month ago, just went on my own with a friend just to kind of see how benchmarking or competitive, and you just see how business is going there. And you think about, us having a similar amount of production to the Emirates and what they're doing there and what we're squandering here, our opportunity. I don't know another country in the world that would put restrictions on their ability to create wealth for their society. It makes no sense to me. I do not understand it. Any opportunity in any sector, obviously develop responsibly, safety, but we're leaders in that. I've worked around the world. I know what's really happening on the ground. And I'm very hopeful that new policy comes that allows us to unleash our potential.
So speaking of new policy, is there a project that you think would be best out of the handful that are kind of been stalled? Maybe Energy East or LNG development, Kitimat. Does anyone stick out to you?
They're all important. You think about, put the government's hat on and think about the well-being of our society. Well, what do you want? Lots of royalties. So get gas connected better, whether it's LNG to the U.S., through LNG through the U.S., doesn't matter. Get the gas price up. There's a royalty bounty waiting for our provincial governments. So that makes that important. More oil access, especially with today's situation, more access to other markets with oil. That's important too. So I wouldn't put the blinders on any of them. Bit of a sideways answer there, Trevor, but that's how I feel. And driven by private industry.
What changes in the energy sector has surprised you the most and have shaped your approach as a director?
Well, my whole career has been change. So in my early days, I was surprised by the pace of change, but now I'm not. And so I also feel like you can make plans for surprises. They're not going to be perfect, but you have a backbone to your plan versus dealing with the whole apple cart being upset. But the biggest surprise would just be how few companies there are left in Calgary of size and scale. Honestly, seeing all the opportunities, I thought there would be a way bigger intermediate sector. There'd be more international players. My early days, I'd walk across the street and talk to international players all the time and for different countries of the world. It made kind of exciting. And that would be my biggest surprise is that, in Singapore, you talk about having a scale to be a hub, be a world-class leader in producing plasma TVs or whatever. And Calgary's got that scale to be kind of only in this industry, to be that world-class player of energy. And I think we need to protect that, keep it strong and competitive globally. So that'd be my biggest surprise. I'm not 100% sure on the number, but I think when I joined the industry, there was between 500 and 600 companies in Calgary.
Right.
Yeah.
Now there's not that many.
Now there's not. And the intermediate sector is slowly moving to just big. And that surprises me.
Do you think American capital will come back up north?
I think ultimately it will.
Because it would seem
Um,
obvious for deep pockets from the south to purchase their barrels on the market quite cheap right
yeah,
now.
exactly. Yeah, I think you're bang on, Trevor. What holding them back is what we were talking about, the predictability of the operating environment, the policies. But if they see profitability in these big plays, they'll make a move. And I studied the Marcellus a lot. You remember early days of the Montney, we were competing with the Marcellus. We used to study the counties there, Susquehanna and all these, and making sure we could compete with that because it's not just
Mhm.
Alberta versus Alberta. And I studied the Permian a lot, and you look at the great companies there, how quickly they go through inventory. That could be a driver to come here.
Wisdom accumulates through the years. What's one area you found in your life that's gotten better to the years?
I think the appreciation of just everything. I've been able to travel. When I worked in Malaysia, 29, 30 years old, you could just see the disparity of wealth and poverty. And I kind of wish more Canadians would see more of the world and come home and kiss the ground. And, I've just have this appreciation, feel very blessed to even be born in the right generation. I think often my grandparents putting every little bolt, I would undo the bolts on the granaries and we would save those in the coffee cans or the cigarette cans. And think about my other grandparents that owned a store and all the frugality and heating with coal and with wood and using outhouses. And this is only 50 years ago. And here I am, beautiful cities to live in and highways, and I just really appreciate every day.
What's the most proud moment you've had? Maybe at ARC or
I had a surprise when I left Malaysia. They had a surprise party for me. The lady that I worked with out, I did a lot of canoeing when I was young, and I was always going out in the jungle hiking, and I got fascinated by these guys. They would always go back to their kampongs on the river. They'd take these wood boats, always go back to their hometowns. And but in some of these little places, there's like some pretty cool art. And they brought me we were pregnant with our third baby, and they brought me this little baby carrier with intricate beading of all the different animals on the island of Borneo where I was working. And that's the feature in my living room. But it wasn't, I guess that's just the memory part, but just walking in the room and seeing all the people there after working for 2 years, because it was quite a cultural adjustment. But I always respected every person there, and I truly enjoy them and think about the beautiful people of Malaysia and them attending that. I don't know, there's just something about that moment. I was pretty young, maybe it was the first time. It just stands out as a highlight. Just people from around the world standing in one place, sad that I'm leaving, but celebrating our time together.
maybe also building ARC? Proud moment too.
Of course. Of course. Getting those 4 trucks, I was really proud. I couldn't get those trucks. And getting an office and getting ARC going. But reflecting back on ARC was pretty cool. I worked hard, but I'm just one person on a team of incredible people. And the core team I worked with, Doug, Susan, Steve, myself, we were like the VPs. We all just texted each other on July 15th. The ARC's 29 today. So we're pretty darn proud of it.
You mentor now a lot of people nowadays, but who were some of your mentors throughout your career, and who did you look towards?
Fellow that stands out in my mind is Al Tuji. He was kind of my second boss at Shell. Very interesting fellow of Japanese descent from the Lethbridge area. Just incredibly thoughtful and would take the time to pass his skills and knowledge to me. Him and Bill Kinoshita were my mentors of my young age, helping me fill my toolkit with technical skills. And then as I moved through Shell Caroline, I was actually mentored a lot. I was on the construction site for 2 years, and every morning I'd do the safety walk around. And I was just mentored by the guys doing the welding and putting the modules together. And it was like all those field guys are incredible, and that's just stuck with me, and that's why all my whole career I stayed close to the field. I have to say Mac's name because, and then another gentleman named Walt DeBoney, who was the vice chair of ARC. Walt was that practical oil and gas guy, and I just distinctly remember him one time telling him on my character, Myron, be yourself. We like your stupid jokes, you know, and just they helped me build the authentic me. And it doesn't sound like an oil patch kind of conversation, but it's true. You need confidence to lead people. And Mac and I had a very interesting conversation one time about implicit trust because he's the chair, I'm the CEO. I'm presenting to investors in New York, and he's maybe on his way somewhere to a business meeting in India. You know, we've got 2 minutes to talk. It's not going to be perfect, but he said to me, whatever we're saying, we're putting ARC ahead of ourselves, and we implicitly trust that each other is doing the best for the company, even if our email or our conversation is short or not perfect. We always know that about each other. And he taught me a lot of cool stuff.
Maybe to get towards the end, what excites you most about the Canadian energy industry now as you look forward?
Well, I've got 2 son-in-laws in the industry, my daughter in the industry. These are smart kids, and there's lots of smart people in the industry. I'm excited to see kind of Calgary go through like a resurgence and just stay as an energy superpower of knowledge. I'd like to see more companies, which we talked about, and success of the existing ones to keep building our brand. But I know the resources are here, and I know the products in need globally. So just exciting to see us get connected globally and maintain Western Canada as an energy superpower.
And a quick shout out to Karen Nielsen for connecting us today. Thank you, Karen. Before we wrap up, I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Trevor. It was very enjoyable, and thanks for your great questions.
Hello, listeners out there. Thanks for checking out the podcast. Hopefully the episode provided some insights. If you enjoyed the show, check out trose.ca where more episodes are yet to come. Until next time, happy coffee drinking.